Why don't you start by sharing with us kind of what your overarching theme or understanding or mindset is surrounding failure and mistake, and just kind of that philosophy that you have there.
Yeah, for sure. So I think from an early stage or an early point in people's lives, from the time you're 4 or 5 years old, you're taught that you need to succeed. Everyone knows that failure sucks, but whether it be, getting ready for school in the morning and making sure you brush your teeth, or, going to little league practice, or winning your little league game, or landing a job, or going to college, you spend your entire life down this path where people tell you these are what success means to people in normal life. And while those may be failures, I don't think necessarily that applies to where the modern entrepreneur exists today. Normal people don't get bit by the entrepreneurial bug. So if that's their success path, and if they don't go to college, they fail, and if they don't get a job they work at for 40 years, they're a failure. That doesn't apply to entrepreneurs or just startup junkies. In the startup world, we like to say fail early and fail often, because that's the best way to learn. So, there's nothing more I can say to apply to that other than, startup people aren't normal.
Yeah.
We're a special breed of people that are changing the world. And, there's millions of people across the U.S. that all they want to do is their job. They don't want to think critically. If something bad happens to the Walmart cashier, someone spills something, a lot of times they'll just call a manager. It's not their job to think about what to do about it.
Mm-hmm.
Entrepreneurs are different in the way they fail. They fail early, they fail often. They learn how to make those business critical decisions, so that when they get into a situation, whether it be the juice falling on the register or a server going down during a massive launch, that they know how to make the proper decision.
Yeah. So so failure is not necessarily a huge thing to you, a big deal to you.
I've failed a lot, and I'd like to think every startup or every entrepreneur who's worth their weight has failed a lot too, because it's the best way to learn about everything.
Why don't you give us a kind of specifics, not necessarily jumping into your stories yet, but some specifics about how you define kind of the difference between failure and mistake, and that kind of nuance there that they might not always be the same thing, or you might not always consider a certain thing as failure, whereas someone else might consider that failure. Can you kind of let us into your mind there and how you define those things?
Failure has always been a humble learning moment. It's that point in time at which you find out that the path you were traveling down is, not necessarily right. It stops you in your tracks when you're at that moment in time when the decision you made, you realize is absolutely wrong. It kind of makes you take pause and breathe for a minute. On the other side of it, success is not nearly a 180-degree turn. It's not 180 degrees different from failure. It's actually the next moment in time after that failure, when you have the opportunity to either resurrect yourself or to make another great decision based off the failure you just had. Mistakes are mistakes. I think people like to put a lot of difference on them because failure sounds like a massive word. But, like some of the previous people you've interviewed, like Nick Holland, failure can be little, and it should be little. You should fail a little bit every single time, and a small failure is just a mistake. But I think when you make that mistake and you're aware of it, that's a failure, and it becomes a success because you've gotten past that failure. You've learned from it. You've been able to add a little notch to your startup headboard and say, okay, the next time this happens, I'm going to make a better decision because of it.